Thank you very much for waiting a long time. Did you enjoy your lunch? And now we are now under the international seminar. That's why we also prepare such an international type lunchbox for today. I really hope that you can really enjoy the afternoon session, and that's why I just share a joke to really wake you up after lunch. And now these days, for the recent years in Korea, for the non-violence, actually as well as the concept of violence in a lot of the social acts for a lot of the discussions and the issues to really resolve those violent issues, we have faced some of the challenges and social issues. And in this regard, we'd like to also invite the professor of Seoul National University, Kim Jung-hyo, under the theme of the paradox of non-violence in martial arts. Let's welcome him with a big round of applause.
Hello, everyone. So during break time, I watched a Taekwondo performance delivered by World Taekwondo Federation. So it was such thrilling performance, quite amazing. Today, I'd like to talk about philosophical ground of such performance. Today's theme is martial arts and non-violence. So when I requested to deliver presentation, I was quite perplexed. Why? There's such a mismatch between martial arts and non-violence. But in the meantime, in the middle of paradox, I was able to look into this notion philosophically. So for a few weeks, I was engaged in deep thinking. Today's presentation is about delivering such thinking. First of all, before talking about martial arts and non-violence, very bluntly, I'd like to give you this question. Actually, I'm irrelevant to martial arts arena. I'm a philosopher. So as a philosopher, I'd like to present you with a question of what is martial arts? Of course, non-practitioners are well aware of what it is about. There are many discourses. Martial arts bodily movements that systemize the art of fighting. If you fail to suppress others, you are killed. So there is no other way to protect yourself other than violence. In response to violence, martial arts is a systemized violence. When I deliver this point of view, the martial arts practitioners might be upset. Martial arts are not about offending others, but defending oneself as a self-defense mechanism. So ultimately, martial arts is about promoting peace, according to practitioners. So this is the martial arts as a mechanism of defense and self-defense. When I adopt such perspective, we are locked in paradox of violence. What is the paradox? This means violence is suppressed by only another violence. For example, there are mobs who swing bats and iron pipes and breaking everything they have. What is the best way to stop them? Maybe the bigger violence. That is what the police is doing in modern society. But we don't call the power of the police as violence. Rather, it is a public authority. But they are in the category of physical force, so it is called violence. That's why there are some police brutality and power abuse. That is the paradox of violence. If you say martial arts is about self-defense and defense, then we cannot draw non-violence from such mechanism. In order to suppress war, some countries are promoting armaments and weaponry system. Physiologically, martial arts and violence are intertwined. Then, how can we strengthen non-violence through martial arts? In what mechanism martial arts violence can be drawn? So my presentation is to adopt philosophical perspective. Number one, I would like to focus on the concept of excellence. In Greek, excellence is arete. In English, excellence. Dictionary-wise, arete defines functions unique to person and object reaching the highest state. So the arete of eye is looking at well, and the arete of shoemaker is to produce well-made shoes, while the arete of a doctor is to fully cure a patient. Then what is the arete of athletes? Physical excellence. But I am being vague now because different arete is required for different area. Sprinter has an arete of running the fastest, and weightlifter has the arete of lifting the heaviest object. But this is highly related to modern sports. Most of the sports that we enjoy today derive from British modern society, such as soccer, tennis, rugby, and golf, to name a few. But this area was not a sports in the beginning. When you do soccer, you can use hands. Maybe you are able to wield fists. There was such a blurry boundary between sports and violence in the modern society. By removing such violence, it became a new mechanism. Elias sees the state monopoly of violence is related to modern sports. So only states can exercise violence with the monopoly, and Elias believes that the modernization began with state monopoly. The same applies to violence, and the sports activity were categorized as an acts of such rule mechanism. Elias originates such understanding from hunting foxes. Hunting foxes was a leisure activity in the modern society, but with the passage of time, there was a rule that you shouldn't use any tools. So hunting and killing foxes became the responsibility of hunting dogs. Exercising, wielding violence, looking at such acts of violence itself became the source of joy. And that is the beginning of modern sports. In modern sports, rules play such an important role. Rules are such a fundamental factor in sports. Without rules, you cannot see games play out. What is more important is the fact that rules promote excellence. So in sports, athletes were not allowed to use hands. So for better performance, athletes of the soccer were allowed to use other bodily functions, and it led to other techniques such as dribble, trapping, etc. In boxing, with other techniques advancing, it transitioned from fighting into sports. The same applied to judo and other sports. So suppressing violence was created from the form of rules, and the rules became the foundation of arete in sports. And the arete of sports is different from other. So the arete of a shoemaker is to produce well-made shoes, and the arete of doctor is to fully cure a patient. But it is viewed as a means itself. When patients are healed, the arete of doctor ends. However, arete in sports has fundamental meaning itself. So Usain Bolt's 100-meter running world record does not help the daily society. It just shows how fast humans could run. This is the symbolism of the sports. The same applies to the skater Kim Yeon-a's performance. What about martial arts? The same applies to martial arts. Offending and defending others transition to the acts of the movement itself. And you can see such transition from Taekwondo's Pumse. So Taekwondo's Pumse is based on the system of movements, but how to describe the techniques differs. Speed, direction, sight, breathing, and spirit of the movement's power can be seen from Taekwondo. This means martial arts transcends violence and it can lead to aesthetic value. And you can see from other creation, martial arts promote the act itself, then the act of violence is removed and the leap forward to the beauty is created. And we can find such sweet spot. However, I'm not saying that this alone can explain the non-violence of martial arts. As we mentioned before, the spectacular performance of World Taekwondo Federation served as the icon of peace driven by Taekwondo. However, breaking wood planks and other techniques show that Taekwondo is driven by the algorithm of violence. In order to look into non-violence of martial arts, we need to have one step further, and I can find the answer from spiritual transcendence. Martial arts are basically about bodily movements, and bodily movements influence spiritual things, but causality cannot explain that because the physical and the mental are two separate things. There is a dramatic difference. So spiritual does not take space because it is intangible, while the other is true with the body. Body is bendable, but the spirit is not bendable. So there are different traits for body and the spirit, and this leads to the martial arts leading to a spiritual transcendence, and we can find some examples from a Bao. Anthropologically, Bao was a tool to hunt an animal or shoot an enemy on the field. This is the existential origin of a Bao. So archery demands excellence in accuracy. So archery is fundamentally another form of violence. However, with the age of peace coming, the Bao changes its existence into the form of mark. However, the archery was basically based on violence. In order to make a transition, leap forward was needed. Leap forward comes from spiritual transcendence. So here, the mechanism changed from the killing someone into a mark. When you hit the mark, the mechanism of training is different. When you shoot the very center of this archery, you need to have training bodily and spiritually. But when you have like one elevation, then you can create the Gyeong. This was created by Yi Hwang, a renowned scholar. And he used the term easing body and mind and focusing mind. These two terms, 심평체정, 일제중간, are about no longer acting to hit the mark with an arrow, but an opportunity to reflect on one's mind and body. And Yi Hwang tried to reach the state of Gyeong. So this concept did not appear at the time of Yi Hwang. Confucius and Mencius also commented this, saying nobleman does not compete, but if he participates in competition, it must be archery. Mencius commented that generous man is like an archer shooting an arrow. Archer first straits oneself before shooting, and even if he misses a mark, does not hold grudge to the victor, only finding the fault within him. So it was about reaching righteousness, and this was also found in Japan. So the famous book Zen in the Art of Archery, written by Enjan Herigel, emphasized the spirit of bow, commenting that when shooting a bow, everything depends on the center of non-movement, and this is the essence of Japanese archery. So when I say this martial arts spiritual transcendence, some say this is Eastern mysticism or Orientalist perspective. But this is also dealt with in the Western society, especially in the case of Heidegger, the essence of technology. In his philosophy of technology, he highlighted this concealment. This is about bringing concealed things to the front of eye. So you can make a spectacular statue of virtue from drawing a wooden creatures. And Heidegger calls this is the disconcealment, and this technique is called techne. So technology is concealment. Drawing potentials lying within the body out to the side is concealment, disconcealment, and that is the essence of technology. And Heidegger explains technology by the windmill's mechanism to produce sleeping energy through lending itself to natural wind. Wind is a temporary thing, which is a constant. But when there is a wing taking the wind and so is created based on technology, energy is created. And this is the essence of technology called by Heidegger. And this is well practiced in the training of martial arts. There is a leap forward by the windmill's mechanism, and there is a spiritual awakening or elevation with martial arts training. Let's go into one step further. So, in martial arts, all performed body obtain skills, so they cannot be distributed, rented, or exchanged with others. Because the such skill engraved in the body is tied to the existence of a trainee. So for those who do not practice martial arts bodily, then such spiritual concept will not be created. Spiritual awakening, spiritual elevation can be reached by a trainee. Under such circumstances, the technique becomes an incident. And he says that this is about existential horizon. So when practicing such concept in training, we can understand such concept as a category of existential horizon or epidemiological instance. From my presentation, I look into the deep philosophical implication of martial arts. When you understand the mechanism of offense, martial arts can be subduing others easily. So when you focus on martial arts from the perspective of defense, martial arts can be understood as promoting prosperity. Or the acts itself can promote catharsis, but such acts themselves cannot create non-violence of martial arts. When you discover the spiritual value of bodily movement, you can create non-violence, and such practice is never ending. When I derive Aristotle's words, non-violent nature of martial arts does not exist in actuality, it exists in potentiality. Continuous pursuit forms an unstoppable trait. When you stop pursuing spiritual value of martial arts will remain stagnant. Ironically, martial arts are on such a paradoxical bodily movement. It can become violent tools or it can become non-violent tools. That's why it is important for the great master to subdue body strength as much as one can. Non-violence can be the biggest gift of irony to mankind. Let me conclude my presentation. Professor Kim Jong-hyo focused on the very destiny of martial arts and how to overcome non-violence of martial arts. Next, Kang Seok-jae, a senior consultant of World Taekwondo Cares Program, will deliver a presentation under the title of Taekwondo and Social Responsibility Case Studies of World Taekwondo's Global Peace Movements. Please give a big round of applause.
Good afternoon.
I am really honored to make a presentation on this session 2. I am Seok-jae Kang, senior consultant in the World Taekwondo Cares Program. Before I get to my main topic, you will watch a 3-minute video of World Taekwondo.
World Taekwondo never stands still. We'll keep getting bigger, we'll keep getting better, and keep evolving.
동경올림픽에 4명의 올림픽 선수들이 참가했습니다. 장애인 1명, 일반 하계올림픽에 3명입니다. 남긴 선수들.
And we also have the 2 refugee athletes as well, including the people with disabilities as well.
태권도 박예재단하고 태권도 케어에
Taekwondo
대한 설명입니다.
Humanitarian Foundation will be also demonstrated throughout the video clip.
요르단 나지락에는 난민 캠프.
That was the refugee camp as well for the training. Taekwondo is one of the refugee camps.
Willing to provide opportunities.
유엔 제네바 본부에서 태권도 시범단이
That was the UN Geneva
For the United
declare
Nations,
the
the
convention
World Taekwondo
commitments
Federation has
for
proven
the World
to be
Taekwondo
just such a
Foundation.
partner. As an Olympic sport,
조정원 세계 태권도연맹 총재이십니다.
He is also the president of the World Taekwondo Foundation.
we decided to create the Taekwondo Humanitarian Foundation.
바티칸에서 교황 앞에 태권도 시범
That
훈련장.
was also one of the demonstrations
young refugee children
in
and
one of the
refugee
refugee
camps,
camps.
and also orphanages and orphans and some other young children.
The World Taekwondo Cares Program assists Taekwondo federations in developing countries with grants, uniforms, equipment, and coaching.
개선보다 귀하다고 하는 세계
Peace is more
태권도연맹
precious than
슬로건이기도
triumph.
합니다.
That's the slogan of the.
As you watch the video, World Taekwondo is the world taekwondo governing body. But you see, Taekwondo has a demonstration, and we have a care program, and Taekwondo Humanitarian Foundation, and then our World Taekwondo and International Taekwondo Federation joint Taekwondo demonstration. All those things are designed to serve for mankind. That means Taekwondo's social responsibility. So today's topic is paradox of nonviolence in martial arts. So they say why Taekwondo and then nonviolence means peace or a certain state. Why Taekwondo has that kind of images. So through World Taekwondo, my presentation, I expect you can better understand our works of World Taekwondo and then our peace movement. As you know, Taekwondo is origin of Hallyu or Korean wave. And Taekwondo is Korea's gift to the world. Taekwondo is Korea's national sport, and then it's Korea's representative cultural brand. Most agree this point. However, there is Taekwondo has several faces. Taekwondo is a martial art. Martial art values tradition. The Gukgiwon is in charge of this martial art, Taekwondo. And there is another major Taekwondo face is Olympic sport of Taekwondo. That is, World Taekwondo is in charge because World Taekwondo, like FIFA, is under the control of International Olympic Committee. This is some Olympic sport. So that is, World Taekwondo is in charge. So we have evolved to better to do things. And there is another thing is Taekwondo as a sport for all. So there is Taekwondo aerobic or the other so many things. So Taekwondo is not only one. Also you see there is Taekwondo, there is sparring. 격투기 or sparring fighting. There is another is 품새, set patterns of exercises. So not only 겨루기 sparring techniques, it also has such an as a way of life, Taekwondo values respect, mutual and perseverance, and like that. So the first session dealt with mutual respect. This session is non-violence means peace. So I would like to give you some World Taekwondo cases of global peace initiatives or movement. World Taekwondo has a mission. The mission is Taekwondo for all and world peace through Taekwondo. Big mission. Vision is develop Taekwondo throughout the world from grassroots to elite level and provide all the opportunity to practice, play, watch and enjoy Taekwondo, regardless of age, sex, gender, religion, ethnicity, and ability. And then it has strategic priorities. The first one is respectability. World Taekwondo wants to be one of the most respected international sport federation by 2023. 2023 marks the 50th anniversary of the founding of World Taekwondo. World Taekwondo was established in 1973. Accountability. World Taekwondo wants to be one of the best governed international sports federations according to IOC and ASOIF good governance indicators. And also sustainability. This is what I said. We also want to inspire the most vulnerable. That's why we created a care program and Taekwondo Humanitarian Foundation and then Taekwondo Peace Corps. And they want to do together with the International Taekwondo Federation, joint demonstrations. Through Taekwondo demonstrations, we want to show the world we love Taekwondo and the world peace. Because of time limit, I will briefly mention about World Taekwondo history. 1973, IOC recognized World Taekwondo as the world's governing body in 1980. And then Taekwondo was demonstration sport at the 1980 Seoul and the 1992 Barcelona Olympics. And then 1994, September 4, IOC session confirmed Taekwondo as an Olympic sport from 2000 Sydney Olympics. That's why we had the Olympics 2000 and 2004 Athens, and then 2004 8 Beijing, 12 London, 16 Beijing. Rio Olympics. So at that time we changed our logo in 2005 according to our reform committee recommendations. The first World Taekwondo logo, the second one WTF, World Taekwondo Federation, we used. And then 2017, Muju World Championships, we had a General Assembly, we changed our name, World Taekwondo. You know, World Taekwondo Federation, the initial is really ridiculed by many foreigners. That's why we changed the World Taekwondo. And then we had many joint demonstrations. And then we had the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, Summer and Paralympics. Taekwondo debuted Tokyo Paralympics for the first time ever. Now, Dr. Chung Won-cho, who was a former president of Kyunghee University, he has serving as a president of World Taekwondo since 2004. Now it is 18 years. So last October 11th, he was re-elected for the 6th term. And the Secretary General now vacant. The former was Hassan Rafati, American. We have a structure, General Assembly, Council, President, Continental Union. The most supreme decision-making body, General Assembly. Council total 37. And the Continental, 5 Continental Unions newly set up Presidents and Secretary Generals. We have a global membership of 210, but we say we have 210 plus 1. Why? Plus 1 means refugees worldwide. We respect, we care for refugees. That's why we use. And then within this year, the Vatican City will be our 211th members. So it's now on the way because Vatican City, they applied for our membership. So through e-voting, Council and then General Assembly will approve. This is our secretariat. Seoul headquarters in here. And Lausanne, we have a liaison office. Demonstrations. This is, as you saw, during lunchtime, America Got Talent. We had April, we had preliminaries. Because of Golden Buzzer, we advanced to quarterfinal, semifinal, and final matches, round. So showed the world. What is important is at the end of the performance, they showed peace is more precious than triumph, this slogan. This is World Taekwondo. That's why the judge, he said he gave Golden Buzzer because he thought Taekwondo is a fighting sport, but it's not. Taekwondo is respect, confidence, love for peace. He mentioned. That's why they think Taekwondo is a dangerous, violent sport. But we value high world peace. So Dr. Chung Won-cho, World Taekwondo President's idea is want to achieve world peace through Taekwondo. We have 12 regional training centers worldwide. Muju Taekwondo One is our central training center. World Taekwondo organizes 12 promoted events. 10 is existing one. The 11th World Taekwondo Women Open Championships. Next week in Saudi Arabia, they host the first Women's Open Championships. It's ironical, but we respect women. That's why they want to an annual event. Next year, we will host the first World Children's Championships. So before Dr. Chung Won-cho became World Taekwondo President, we had only 3 or 4 championships. But now it is expanded more. You can see one by one, briefly. The biggest one, World Taekwondo Championships. Next April in Wuxi, China, we will hold. Junior, Sofia, Bulgaria. Pumse, Goyang City next year. Team Championships. Para Taekwondo Championships. Cadet, 12 to 14-year-old competitors. Beach Championships. And the Grand Prix Series, Grand Slam Champions, and we had also Gala Awards. We also Hall of Fame event. So Taekwondo is in all Olympic and then continental multi-events, and also international multi-sport events, except Commonwealth Games and the World Beach Games. So that's why we want to include Taekwondo in the 2 multi-sports events. Okay, and then there is other. We have Olympic sport of Taekwondo, Olympic Games, but because of time, I will go directly to our development program. So Taekwondo as a goal, we have various programs to support our M&A, member national associations. But Taekwondo as a tool, we want to empower refugees and then our orphans and then those in power, empower the powerless is our main region. So this is existing one. So Taekwondo Peace Corps, we created in 2008. A team is composed of 4 Taekwondo major students, more than 3 black belt holders, and 1 language fluent people. So we dispatched since 2008, as of end of 2019, a total of 2,600 students was dispatched, 123 different countries on 24 occasions. World Taekwondo President wants to create Sport Peace Corps. Taekwondo Peace Corps is only Taekwondo, but we want to involve all Olympic sports and non-Olympic sports together. So we ask IOC and UN join together. This is our initiative. Then the CARE program, we started in 2016, January. So this is to empower the powerless. So we had a Nepal CARE program, earthquake victims. We send the local and the Korean Taekwondo instructors to the site and they teach Taekwondo for 1-year program or several months. Rwanda SBS Hope School projects. And the CARE program is, we also had Nepal, 1 year Sri Lanka, and Cambodia. So all street people or women from defective family members, and then all those things we hope to. This is a Sri Lanka opening ceremony. Women empowerment and reformatory inmates, students are also learning Taekwondo. So Sri Lanka and then Bhutan, alcohol and drug addicts, we teach Taekwondo for free for 1-year program. So because of COVID, a little bit stopped, but Kyrgyzstan, East Timor, Jordan, Turkey, and then Sri Lanka, Bhutan, we will continue and keep expanding. This is with the financial support of Asia Development Foundation, ADF. We received designated funds, $200,000 per year. So we designate and then we teach Taekwondo for them. Taekwondo Humanitarian Foundation, it is also our responsibility to help refugees worldwide. Dr. Chung Won-cho, he created in 2016 April. So this is in September 21, 2015. At that time, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon invited World Taekwondo presidents and World Taekwondo demonstrator team to UN headquarters. At that during his speech in UN, Dr. Cho, he announced officially the launch of Taekwondo Humanitarian Foundation. And the next year, we created the Taekwondo Humanitarian Foundation in Lausanne, Switzerland headquarters. So we had many centers. In Ajirak refugee camp, we built a humanitarian Taekwondo center in April 2016. So we are teaching 100. From this center, 16 black belts already we produced. This is the center. These are artificial turf, they training. And then we have Rwanda. We have also Mahama and Kijiba Training Center. We are teaching. Turkey, Elbili and Kili, we teach. And Lausanne, 20, we also refugees we teach. So far, 7,000 refugees we train so far, and 8 IOC scholarship holders among the refugee trainers. So 10 international federations we had MOUs to use the humanitarian center together. So almost fighting sports combat sports is involving. So Tokyo Olympics, we had accomplished 3 Summer Olympics, the refugees joined. We helped 1 Taekwondo Paralympics Tokyo. So this is achievements like that. And then our rankings. So we are cooperating with all these external organizations. Also, UN Sustainable Development Goals, we are also closely cooperating. And together with that, under One World, One Sport Taekwondo slogan, we are cooperating World Taekwondo and International Taekwondo Federation demonstrations. We had so many. Because of 2014, we had MOU, a protocol of a code between presidents of WTA and ITF with the attendance of IOC President Thomas Baha. This is it. And then we had many UN Geneva office, so many things. This is the Olympics, our activities. This is 20 Paris Paralympics. Lastly, this is Pope. We gave our honorary Dan black belt. Why? Pope receives Taekwondo is a violent sport? No, peace-loving sport, he admitted. This is Olympic Refugee Foundation board meeting. IOC president is chairman of this foundation. Dr. Cho is a founding board member. These are all members. So, this gentleman is Dr. Young-Sik Cho. He is the late father of WT President Jung Won-cho. He was president of International Association of University Presidents in 1981. In San Jose meeting, he proposed the UN International Day of Peace. So UN unanimously approved this day. That's why we call September 21st as UN International Day. So his father motto was World Peace through education. Now World Taekwondo President Jung Won-cho, World Peace through Taekwondo. That is it. So Taekwondo is, as you see, respect. This is gentleman's fair play. So the slogan, peace is more precious than triumph, is through World Taekwondo. You may see several cases of international peace initiatives. And I hope you better understanding of World Taekwondo. Thank you.
네, 강석재.
So thank you, Senior Consultant Kang Seok-jae. You said peace is more precious than triumph, which is a familiar concept to us. So we had a listen to the paradox of nonviolence in martial arts and World Taekwondo Federation's case studies. And we will invite a moderator and discussants. In relation to peace development related studies, we have a professor, Kevin Castor from Seoul National University. He will be a discussant. And The moderator for the session 2 will be Professor Lee Won-jae from Kookmin University. So when you come up to the podium, if you require these translation devices, please take it with you. And have a seat, please.
The mic is turned off. Good afternoon. I am Lee Won-jae, professor of Kookmin University. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me here as the moderator for this panel discussion. I'm so honored to be here. In particular, I'd like to also extend my gratitude to the two presenters, and the two previous presenters are also in very close interaction with me. The first presenter, Professor Kim, was also the lecturer actually during the PhD course in the past. My major is management, so in this regard, probably my major business management is a little far from the philosophy. But for the management and probably the theme for martial arts, we can say that some aspects in the reality, the martial arts could be regarded as a violent tool in some others' perspectives. So therefore, in regards to the management, such important issues and clues were also collected from his lecture in the past. So thank you very much once again, Professor. And Kang Seok-jae, the second presenter, senior consultant. Before I moving into the Kookmin University, I was also served and worked for World Taekwondo Federation. So he was actually my former colleague. In particular, with the senior consultant Kang Seok-jae and the President Cho, was also very loud enough. So without even using the microphone, like Kang Seok-jae, the presenter, and myself were very loud enough when we delivered the speech and presentations. So during his presentation just before, he was also very able to deliver such a very good presentation in such a very good and loud voice. With regards to the World Taekwondo Federation, and probably in the fields of the education rather than the sports industry, the two presenters will be the one of the very experts with a lot of the insights and the different perspectives and the messages throughout today's panel discussion. So first of all, I would like to also introduce the professor of the Seoul National University, Kevin Castor, to share any comments or any your ideas regarding the two previous presentations. And after listening to your comments, we'd like to also have the very active discussion. So Professor Kevin Castor, could you add some more comments regarding the two presentations before?
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you for the invitation today to UNESCO ICM. As the chair introduced, I'm not from martial arts or sport at all. I'm an educator and a peace researcher. And perhaps unfortunate for you today, I'm known as a very critical scholar in that field. So I'm going to share mostly critical perspectives on the discussion today. And so I have 8 points here. I'll try to work through them one by one. And then we can have a discussion and any sort of response to the points that I raise. So the first thing that I would say from a peace studies perspective is there's no paradox here between martial arts and violence. And what I would think is that based on today's discussion, it seems that anything that hurts us is violence. So giving birth is violence, dental visits are violence, exercise is violence, surgery is violence. And if this is the case, then I think this is very slippery, and indeed it's actually dangerous thinking. So I'm going to explain the slippery part of it first, and then I'll explain the dangerous. And so first, I think we need to define what we mean by violence and non-violence. According to research in peace and conflict studies, and also from the field of healthcare, from the NIH in the US, violence is intentional, systematic harm inflicted to benefit the aggressor and to negatively affect the victim. So that's important. It's intentional, and it's systematic, and it's meant to inflict harm. So unintentional harm, then, from this perspective, such as during sports, is not violence. This, of course, does not mean that sport cannot at all be used for violence. Of course it can. There's ancient sacrifice and death during sports events, as one example. And non-violence, in turn, if we're to give a definition for this, it's a philosophy to not inflict intentional systematic harm on others. And this philosophy guides individuals and organizations toward peaceful interrelations with each other. My next point is that calling sport violence in some ways diminishes actual severe and exploitative types of violence around the world, such as genocide, such as terrorism, gender-based violence, armed conflict, workplace violence, suicide. These are all very serious forms of violence. So I think we need to expand the concept of what we mean by violence to include structural and cultural forms that look beyond intra and interpersonal violence towards social, political, economic, and ecological conditions that support the inflicting of harm on others. These are forms of violence that transcend the individual and look toward the interrelations between these areas. And in response to one of the comments that came up earlier, I would say that violence is not only suppressed by other forms of violence. So we don't solve violence simply with more violence. There are, of course, non-violent movements, such as those led by Gandhi in India or Martin Luther King in the United States, that in fact changed those societies. So we know that there are responses to direct structural cultural violence from a peace perspective that can give us alternatives, positive alternatives. And what some of these might be are what we call peace enforcement. So we had police officers given as a suggestion of a way that violence is used to try to mitigate other forms of violence. From a peace studies perspective, this is called peace enforcement. It's not violence. It can become violence, such as in the United States with the violence of, the systematic violence of police officers against certain groups in society, but it does not have to be. It's called peace enforcement. We know that peacekeeping is an option, so bringing blue helmets into fighting districts to try to separate fighting parties. And this happens in schools as well. We have peace building and we have peacemaking. These are all different responses. And sport usually fits within what we call the category of peace building, that is developing values, attitudes, and skill sets to support peacemaking efforts. So the reason this is important is because if we know what type of violence we're talking about, then we can know what type of peaceful response to take. Okay, to my last point, why is this dangerous? Such an individualized perspective of violence, it personalizes such acts, and it assumes that individuals are the cause and the consequence of violence. Now, what this lacks is a systemic and structural analysis of the more typical causes of the social types of violence that we're thinking about: ethno-nationalism, militarism, racism, capitalism, and patriarchy. It might also position the development worker, so those of us that are working in developing context through education and sport, it might position us as saviors and as heroes. And this is very problematic when we are complicit in a system that causes inequalities for the groups that we're working with. Now, case studies are very inspirational. I enjoyed learning about the case studies today very much. And I think that as all of us work with case studies and research and in our practice, we need to think more theoretically. So a case study in itself is just an example of something, but what does it theoretically mean, right? So what I think we want to do is begin to try to theorize these cases. And for me, one of the best theories that explains the importance of such case studies that I heard today is from Michel Foucault, and he calls it heterotopic spaces. And what he means by heterotopic is that we can find spaces that are fleeting, they're momentary, but they bring us peace. Peace of mind, peace of being. They may not last, but we can create conditions, for example, through sport, that can help to foster those heterotopic moments for youth and for others. Now, obviously, to end, if the intent from the discussion today is simply to talk about intra and interpersonal forms of violence, then certainly martial arts and other forms of meditation, such as Qigong or Tai Chi, these can assist in helping us to manage anger and frustration and to behave through pro-social interactions with others. And this is the spirit of philosophy and the practice of nonviolence that can be cultivated through education and sport, but it's not a grand effort to peace building. And I think that we can embrace the mundane and the everyday acts that help us to lead a better life today. But although this brings us hope, we should not be naive about what something such as education or sport can achieve. It's part of a much larger ecosystem, and we need to examine our life and work within the broader ecosystem. Those are my comments for today. I don't have any questions for you in specific, but just some comments in response to this thinking. Thank you very much.
케빈 캐스터 교수님 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your good comments, Professor Castor, and regarding the two presentations. And I see that we are such a very in the perfect harmony, joined by the two presenters and the panelists here. There's such a theory and the concept and the approaches were so highlighted throughout the first presentation. And the senior consultant Kang also mentioned about the issues and the measures, how to really actively promote the campaigns done by the World Taekwondo Federation. And as there's a Professor Castor also highlighted that for the martial arts, the topics are to be more expanded beyond our internal the staff or the stakeholders. We also have to increase such the spectrum of the engagement and involvement from a lot of the different levels to really talk about the non-violence issues. And so first of all, the Professor Kim. And first of all, while you also had the first presentation, could you also like to share any comments that you have missed out due to the time constraints? And as also Professor Castor highlighted, do you also have more comments that you like to add from your perspective? So feel free to share any comments or any feedback. Thank you.
So when I think about the topic of nonviolence and martial arts, not only my presentation, but also recent study outcomes show that we have a possibility of looking into the possibility of nonviolence in martial arts. There is the newly coined term changbal or invention, especially in the area of evolutionary biology or AI. The concept of invention or changbal in Korean is such a philosophical concept. This helps us explain nonviolence in martial arts. So what is changbal or invention? Biologically, there is a neuron activity in cerebrum, which is a biological activity. So this forms thinking, but it is basically difficult to explain such concept. So physically, we think of the concept of freedom and a new possibility. How is it possible? To that end, what we need is a quality leap. So biology delivers the term of invention or changbal, and this is highly related to nonviolence in martial arts. So when I talk about nonviolence in martial arts, what is important is how to put such concept into action. For example, so special forces in the military go through such high level of martial art to subdue enemy. They have the very special purpose. Martial arts deliver such exponential force. In the meantime, martial arts can stimulate others. However, after that, there can be the transition of thinking. So there is another process that can be created for existential thinking. Without such process, it can be empty. Thank you. So senior consultant Kang Seok-jae was like showing his boss Jo Jong-won in a dramatic way, and he successfully promoted such scenery. So in the interest of time, you may have missed some important point. So in relation to what Professor Castor pointed out, would you please elaborate on more?
In fact, under such a very limited time, it was also very difficult to explain all the detailed information regarding my organization, World Taekwondo Federation. I was actually the former journalist for Korea Herald before, and once I also inaugurated as the chief officer of the World Taekwondo Federation and the for promotions or public relations committee, and as a member of the committee, I also traveled different countries to really promote the World Taekwondo Federations and to become the World and the Taekwondo as one of the official sports. And as we also have some of the issues to make the Taekwondo as one of the official Olympic sports, and as also we have the chairman or the president, Mr. Cho, for World Taekwondo Federation, and then with the global or the International Taekwondo Federation was also the co-partner with my federation as well. And between the World Taekwondo and the Korea Herald, we also put a lot of the efforts to really promote the World Taekwondo to different countries. And since 2005, the IOC has been reviewing and evaluating the subcategory for the sports for the Olympic Games. And that from that time, the Taekwondo, for its survival, were definitely needed to become one of the official sports industry for the Olympic Games. That's why we submit about the more than 120 pages that we have submitted to the IOC to really become the Taekwondo as the official sports for the Olympic Games. And since that time, I have been also done in the PR, the sector, since 2005 until 2015. And then as the origin of the sports from Korea, the Taekwondo has been promoted a lot and actively, mainly in Korea. And then that's why we also had the turning point to really have the foreign members and advisors and presidents and the committee members from different countries to really make the World Taekwondo Federation as one of the international organizations. And about the 25 countries, the issues of removing the wrestlings from the world sports was also controversial at the time. But now we also see that with the president of the Mr. Cho, when he was a professor of the Kyung University, he was actually the first doctor, the PhD degree, who actually educated the Taekwondo of the time. And as of 2015, the Taekwondo did not really face any issues because we also had a lot of the changes, and there were no really doubt to see that we do not really have any reasons. And I also believe that there's no reason that we, for the IOC, really kick off the Taekwondo as the official sports in the sports game. And therefore, we also formed the committees in Switzerland in 2016. And we also formed a lot of the different programs and activities from the time. It's such a very different, the international organizations and for social contributions and the businesses. We also see that now the Taekwondo has been recognizing a lot and appreciated by the IOC. That's why we also had some dialogues with the president of the IOC as well as the president of Korea, Moon Jae-in. That's why we also form a committee attended by the President Cho of the World Taekwondo Federation as well as the president of the Republic of Korea as well as the president of the IOC to really discuss some of the issues on really making the Taekwondo as the firm and official Olympic sports. And now, as we also have the academic seminar, it's not only important to really see that in number or the number of the gold medals from the World Olympic Games in the Taekwondo, but we also have to put more efforts in really developing the Taekwondo. You also deliver another presentation, Professor Kang. Thank you very much for your active comments. And whenever I see you and meet you again, and I'll let you to say hello to Chairman Cho later.
So, if you believe martial arts are valuable to educate the youth, and maybe if you have a child or children, would you teach martial arts to them? If so, why? Please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. I think what I want to say today is that martial arts is not violence or violent education, but it's peace education. So there are efforts toward creating equanimity and values and skills for young people to be able to practice peace in their life and in different levels. So that's the main message, that I think there's not a paradox here that we're preaching or teaching violence. We're teaching methods of peace through embodiment, through the hand, through the spirit. And that's really what the peace education through sport is about. It's not just the head, it's not rationality, but it's about the heart and the spirit and the hand. And so I think this comprehensive approach is the reason that I don't have any children, but if I did have children, I would certainly use sport and other embodied means to teach them ways to manage themselves with others. Thank you very much.
감사합니다.
Thank you. So this session is aired live streaming on YouTube. So time management is such an important thing. Of course, you look forward to more discussion. But in the interest of time, I'd like to wrap up the session 2. And I'm looking forward to session 3 for more insight. Thank you for your attention. And thank you, presenters and discussants, for your time. I'd like to conclude the discussion session. Then, I'd like to conclude the session 2.